Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and to another installment in the Copper and Wood Chute Mountain Railroad. Over the last few weeks, I've been getting along quite well with it, but as I was thinking over the next steps, I started to become a little concerned about the possibility that the height difference between the standard and narrow gauge cars was too much for the interchange track. This is a good example of some things that just are not obvious in a 2D plan. Sometimes things like this manage to sneak by and they have to be sorted out in full-size 3D. So I put some box cars on the track on both standard and narrow gauges just to see how much the difference was, and the customer agrees with me that it is too much just to cheat. So I'm going to have to lower the standard gauge slightly. It's not that big of a deal. In fact, it's a pretty easy half-day project. So let's just head out to the workshop and see how they do it. Yesterday I had a bit of a troublesome thought about the interchange track between the standard and narrow gauges. I put a couple of boxed cars on the tracks and discovered that the standard gauge car floors were significantly higher than the narrow gauge. I'd already put them away before I thought to make this clip, but I did take a still photograph of the client, so I will include that at the end of this video. But basically the way to fix that is to cut out the sub-road bed on which the standard gauge has been laid and reinstall it on lower risers. So I'm going to do that this morning. I don't suppose it will take very long. I have to lower it by somewhere between 5/16 and 3/8 of an inch. Anywhere in that range will work. It looks like there might be a few screws hidden under the standard gauge spur. One here and one here. So I will probably have to animal those blocks away from the bottom instead of neatly unscrewing everything. Other than that, I don't think there's going to be any problems. Just going to be a lot of mess, a lot of noise, and by the end of the day, it probably won't look much different. But it's something that's got to be done. Well, I was able to get to all the screws except one. The one that was under the edge of this track here, I was able to get it out at an angle. There is still one here which there is no way of getting to it. I'm just going to have to do it with violence from underneath the benchwork. I've also cut all the way along. The cut isn't straight, but by using a shallow cut on the skill saw, I was able to curve it, making it a lot easier. So I don't need the jigsaw to fill in the corners. So next thing I'm going to do is just get those benchwork tops out of the way, remove all the risers and make shorter ones. Okay, well, that was easy enough to get those out of the way. Of course, I had to undo all the feeders. The one screw that I couldn't get to from the top was easy enough. I just hammered a flat bar in at the bottom, forced the screw out of the hole, and then just snapped it off from the bottom. Some of these blocks I'm going to have to cut down because they've got feeder wires running through them. I'm not going to try to get those accurate. I'm just going to cut the tops off roughly, and then I'll install new support blocks next to them. All the others I can just snap off with a single hit with a hammer, get rid of them, and once again put new blocks in slightly different locations. Well, that is all the old risers knocked off out of the way. I decided to run a belt sander over the glue remains just to get that smooth. That way I don't have to put the new blocks in different locations. I can put them anywhere I need to. I've got some special blocks cut with a step in them. I can just slide under the edge of the higher road bed, and it supports both, because otherwise there's quite a long unsupported cantilever. I think I now have enough blocks. I'm just going to get them installed and then I can reinstall the tops. Note that the special risers with the wiring holes are all roughly cut at the top. It would have been just about impossible to cut them accurately. So I just tip the skill saw on its side and cut them lower than they need to go. That way I could just ignore them. That is all those new riser blocks installed, clamped in place. I'm just going to leave that for an hour or so, go inside, get on with something else, and I'll come back out later and continue. One thing I should probably point out, this middle row of risers, it's not parallel with the sides. That's because I wanted to keep it as close to the middle as I could while ensuring it was not going to be directly under the track. It's far enough away that I can put the screws in just behind the track and they'll hit approximately in the middle of the blocks. Well, I left that for a couple of hours for the glue to set. I'm going to come back out again. I put all the clamps away. All I have to do now is to reinstall it and then hook up all the feeders again. Should only take a few more minutes and then I will be done with that project. Well, that is the roadbed reinstalled. I've hooked up all the feeders underneath as well, so there's no wires hanging down. I've put the freight cars back out. Let's go around the other side and take a closer look. Here are the freight cars side by side. If I put the camera down on the track, we can see that the floor heights are now about right. That will make it easy for the client to build a freight transfer platform between the standard and narrow gauges. Note that this particular standard gauge boxcar does actually have a floor that's a little bit too high. That is not the norm. Most of the client's standard gauge freight cars are exactly to scale. That was obviously just built that way because it made construction easier. Well, that's all for this week's video. Hope you enjoyed it, found it useful or interesting or both. As you can see by comparing the first and last photographs in the slideshow, the floors for both the standard and narrow gauge cars now line up beautifully, proving that it was a little project that was well worth doing next week. Not quite sure what I'm going to do next week, mainly because I have several different projects on the go at the moment. I haven't decided which order to present the videos in. Anyway, whatever it is, I hope to see you back here for that. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and bye for now.